everyone. Welcome to another edition of Where the 99 Lead. I'm Andrew Joyce, your host, and Where the 99 Lead, it's a program brought to you by the University of Pikeville, where we talk all things regarding the University of Pikeville. Of course, athletics, academics, and we talk about the Kentucky College of Osteopathic Medicine. We'll talk about programs in and around the campus, building programs as well, new schools, new colleges. And today, a special guest as we talk with a member of the faculty, a longtime member of the faculty at the University of Pikeville. One of my favorite shows every time we get together. Ladies and gentlemen, Nancy Cade, the chair of the Division of Social Science, our guest today. And welcome to another edition. Truly one of my favorite shows.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I enjoy history. I enjoy political science. I am a History Channel junkie. I wish it had more history and less picking and things like that.
Fewer aliens?
Yes, but I enjoy history. You are a local expert in the field of history, and of course on campus known as that. Before we go there, let's introduce Nancy Cade to those that are tuned in that maybe haven't seen the show before, haven't been around campus. Someone has tuned in and maybe they're a history buff. Let's let them know who they're hearing from today. Nancy Cade, Chair, Division of Social Science, but also a Davenport Distinguished Professor of History and Political Science. Talk a little about your background and your history at the University of Pikeville.
I came here in 1986, so I've been here for a little while. Like I say, been here longer than some of the buildings.
Sure.
I started out as an assistant professor, so I started out in the bottom ranks and worked my way up to full professor and chair of the Social Sciences Division. My PhD is actually in social science, so I have studied all of the different fields in the social sciences, but my disciplines are history and political science, and
Right.
and that is where my love is of that. But I've been teaching. My degrees are from Ball State University in Muncie, Indiana. And I've been teaching. I taught a few years at Ball State. I taught at Anderson University. But this is now my home, so I've been here for a little while.
Yeah. Anyone that spent that much time in Pikeville in the mountains, I think it becomes home. If you stay that long, it's kind of tough to leave.
I've lived here longer than I've lived anywhere else in my
Right.
life. So.
And of course, we talk about you being a local expert, but not just that, regionally, even nationally, you're looked to as a consultant. When the Hatfield and McCoy miniseries was revived and there was a documentary, Nancy Cade was consulted and interviewed a part of that because the history that you had attained being in this area. Talk about that. How does that make you feel when you're contacted by one of these networks or some organization?
I get a lot of calls from various people doing research in a variety of fields, coal mining, elections, just all kinds of things. But the call from the gentleman with the History Channel for the Hatfields and McCoys was a bit of a surprise, because usually when they call up, they really don't pan out that well.
Right.
And Daryl Fetty was the gentleman that called me, and he was the producer for one of the producers for the miniseries and also for the documentary. And he called me up, and he was actually in Romania, so he didn't know there was a time change. So he called me up at midnight and woke me up, and we talked. And he asked if I would be interested in hosting Bill Paxton when he came here for his to learn about the area, because he was going to play Randall McCoy, and that's the way Bill works. He likes to get familiar with an area. So I said I'd be glad to host him. He came in. It was pretty successful. We brought him in, got him out of town before anyone knew he was here. So he was able to he wanted to work on his accent.
Sure.
And he wanted to visit the sites.
Yes.
And so we took him around, and I guess they were pleased with what I had done, because the next thing I know, I got a call asking to help them with some of the filming, and then to work on the documentary. And I have no idea how many days and weeks working with the documentary and the other people. And there are things about the miniseries that are historically iffy.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the nature of the animal when you're trying to condense history into a film. But overall, I'm very pleased with the way the miniseries came out and the way the documentary came out. And mostly I'm pleased because it brought a lot more attention to this area, and I think it helps with tourism.
Sure.
So I've been pleased with it.
Right. And did you have any idea when you were first approached the success that the miniseries and the documentary would have, because it really exploded?
Well, I knew Kevin Costner was involved with it. I didn't know how much he was involved at first. That it was his baby, if you will. And he has kind of a mixed record, so I was hoping that it would be, you know, a Field of Dreams and not a Waterworld. So I was hoping it would be successful.
Exactly.
But I never expected it. I never expected it to win Emmys. I never expected the publicity, the success. I never expected to flip on the TV every now and then and see my face. That's a bit of a shock.
Sure.
But I think it's been nice for the area too.
Right. I think so. I think so as well. The tourism interest, especially, we're seeing tourists from all across the country, and a renewed sense of pride in our history. I think so.
Yeah, the feud has a lot of negatives about it, but the authenticity of the people, the strength of basically the pioneers who lived in this area is incredible.
Right.
And I think that documentary brought to light how strong, in my opinion, how strong the women were.
Sure.
But also how strong the men were.
Right.
But it really did bring to light a whole new side of this area, I think.
Absolutely. Dr. Nancy Cade, our guest, you've been teaching, you've been here at the University of Pikeville since 1986. You started as an assistant professor. Let's talk about what you teach now. We'll talk about some of the things you have taught, but let's talk about what you're teaching now.
Right now, I'm teaching, this semester I'm actually teaching a very different mix of classes. I'm teaching European history. I'm also teaching U.S. Constitution and American government and politics. And each one of them has their own flavor. I love teaching American government and politics. It's an entry-level class, and I love to help students understand their government better.
Sure.
We spend a lot of time reading the Constitution, learning about the Constitution, and then in my 400 level class, my senior level class for the development of the Constitution, spend a lot of time learning about this document that is so extraordinary. I mean,
Right.
it is an amazing piece, that oldest functioning Constitution in the world. It's only been amended 27 times. It's an amazing operator's manual for our country.
Is it still relevant today?
Absolutely. It is a living document. And that's one of the things that I find so exciting is I've read it. I have no idea how many times I've read it. By the way, it takes the average American 47 minutes to read it.
Sure.
Totally bizarre piece of trivia, but it's there.
And 47 years to understand it.
And the thing is, there's so much there that is still important, always will be important, and it lives and breathes and changes, and I love that.
Sure.
I absolutely love that.
Of course, political science, you're regarded as an expert. Before we go any further, we'll let people know that we are taping this prior to the national election day on November 4th, and it will be aired following the election. We won't try to sway any certain elections, but I do have a question, because in our area, the hottest race and across the Commonwealth has been Allison Lundergan Grimes and Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell, a longtime office holder, 30 years roughly, and Grimes, a newcomer. Democrat, Republican. The parties involved, obviously a part of the political science debate of those elections. With McConnell's long tenure in the Senate, why has this been such a close race?
A lot of it has to do with the fact that right now, most of the polls will tell you Americans are very anti-Washington.
Sure.
And Mitch represents everything about Washington that is good, everything about Washington that is bad, because he has been there so long.
Sure.
He's a leader of his party.
Right.
He is the public face of his party in the Senate, and he is the public face of the Senate in Kentucky, much more so than Rand Paul. Rand Paul is viewed almost as an anomaly by a lot of people in Kentucky. He is he's going to be our presidential candidate type. That's what we're looking at. But Mitch, because of the negative view, in my opinion, because of the negative view the American public has toward Washington right now, he is, I don't know what to call it, but he is the recipient of all those negatives.
Right.
And so I think that's hurting him tremendously. I think Grimes has run an interesting campaign, and I think that has helped her quite a bit. I think she is young, she's fresh, and I think that has helped get the race a little bit tighter. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. I mean, every single polling that I've read, and all the experts from Rasmussen to Cook to all those, if you look at them, they all say it's too close to call. It's all within the margin of error.
Right.
And yet I would not be surprised at all to see a blowout election. I would not be surprised to see one or the other candidate win by half a dozen, 10 points.
And it could go either way.
And it could go either way.
Right.
There's a few days left.
Sure.
There's always time for something to happen.
And of course, this program to be aired following the election, so in no means are we trying to, or could we, sway a vote. You're tuned to Where the 99 Lead. We talk all things regarding the University of Pikeville, and Dr. Nancy Cade, chair of the Division of Social Science and a Davenport Distinguished Professor of History and Political Science, our guest on this edition. One more question on political science before we move forward. Throw out the names. Throw out the faces. Simply, if a district has a senator who's been in Washington for 30 years and holds such a high position within their party, and a newcomer, which serves the district better?
Again, it's a little difficult to throw out the names. Okay, it's a little bit difficult because you have to look at what they're doing.
Yeah.
But when I was writing my dissertation, so back in the dark ages, when I was writing my dissertation, I was writing about someone who had been a senator, a 3-term senator from the state of Indiana.
Sure.
And he was defeated in his 4th run. And one of the things that I was looking at was the impact that would have. Because by that point, he had tremendous seniority.
Right.
He was able to influence things. He was on all the right committees for the state. And in comes a newcomer. He doesn't have the seniority. He
Right.
doesn't have the ability to influence. He doesn't have the right committees. It took that new senator quite a bit of time to establish himself.
Sure.
So, when I look at this race, that's one of the things you have to consider, is you have someone who has tremendous power,
Sure.
could be the next majority leader of the Senate,
Right.
and you're trading them for someone who is a freshman. It's just like when you look at the House of Representatives race. Hal Rogers, he's chair of the Appropriations Committee.
Right.
You can't get anything better for your district than chair of appropriations.
Exactly. And you would think, one would think that a person in those positions, they've got to really screw up to lose an election back home.
They really do.
If you look at it in that light. And I'm
Absolutely.
not talking McConnell and Rogers, I'm talking anyone from any district with that much seniority and that much power. They've got to really screw up
Yes.
to lose that election. And I think it's bumfuzzled many as to why this is so close.
Well, again, I think the best answer is it's not necessarily about McConnell. it is about the dislike of Washington.
Sure.
But then again, McConnell did kind of throw out the gauntlet a little bit with his statement that he was going to do everything he could to oppose the Democrats.
Right.
And he is viewed personally as a bit of an obstructionist.
Sure.
So he is kind of symbolic of the things a lot of people don't like in Washington.
Right.
But again, like you said, he's very powerful.
He is.
And, you know, that can be very beneficial to the state of Kentucky.
I think it's a very interesting election, and truly,
Absolutely.
yeah, it's not about my vote or anyone else's vote, or it's just a very interesting election for myself personally to watch as it has taken place, and I'm curious to see how it turns out. And I want to talk with you again after the election.
Okay. It'll be interesting to see how it comes out.
Dr. Nancy Cade, our guest, congratulations. Named a Davenport Distinguished Professor of History and Political Science at UPike. I heard that while you were researching Mr. Davenport, you found that the two of you had a lot in common. Talk about that.
Well, I was tremendously honored, first of all, to be named Davenport Distinguished Professor. It is the pinnacle in many ways of an academic career to be named a distinguished professor, and it's a tremendous honor. But I was reading about Mr. Davenport. I knew they had been working on creating this distinguished professorship about 10 years ago, and I knew a little bit about him, but then I started researching him a little bit, and I got tickled after a while because he reminded me very much of my father and my grandfather, my father's father. He had served in the state legislature.
Sure.
And my grandfather had, my great-grandfather actually had served in Michigan legislature. He had been involved in a variety of organizations very similar to the ones my grandfather had been in. He was a veteran. My father was not a veteran. My father actually lost his arm when he was a child, so he wasn't able to serve in the military. But he served as an advisor to the Veterans Affairs Committee of the Senate for many, many years. And so they had that commonality. But then I got really tickled because he raised cattle, and my grandfather was a dairy farmer.
Wow.
And so I just got tickled by the man had so many qualities, and Mr. Davenport had so many qualities and so many career choices very similar to my father, my grandfather. And I got my love of politics from my father.
Right.
You know, I grew up in a family where it was not unusual to have a senator over for dinner, or to have Dad fly off to Washington because he was having to testify before the Senate. And so I grew up in that type of family, and to read about Mr. Davenport, that he was very actively involved in these things and valued education as my parents and my grandfather did, I thought it was just interesting.
Right. Nancy Cade, you're very involved in the Washington Center. First of all, for those that are tuned in, let's talk about what is the Washington Center and what are the opportunities that it provides to UPike students.
The Washington Center for Internships and Academic Seminars was created in 1975 by Mr. and Mrs. Burke, and it is the largest provider of academic internships in Washington, D.C., with over 50,000 alumni.
Wow.
And they also do academic seminars. I became involved with the Washington Center through the academic seminar side of the house. And since 2004, the University of Pikeville has sent students to a variety of academic seminars. We sent them to political conventions, Republican and Democrat both.
Right.
We've sent them to inauguration programs. We've sent them to programs on national security, media and politics, bipartisanship, all these kinds of things. And the way a seminar works is the students are there for 2 weeks usually. They get 3 hours credit, so it's serious academic work.
Sure.
And they hear speakers, and the speakers are incredible. They may be, well, I remember last year having both the chairman of the Republican Party and the chairman of the Democratic Party back to back.
Wow.
Which was fascinating during our bipartisan week. But they hear from practitioners. During the media week, they'll hear from Candy Crowley, they'll hear from Steve Scully, they'll hear from practitioners of the media.
Sure.
And they go on site visits, they go to embassies, they go to all kinds of places like that. So they have a lot of contact with these people, and they get to talk to them, they get to ask them questions. They don't just sit and listen to them speak.
Sure.
And so it's a tremendous experience for them. And then on the internship side of the house, we now have, and we have approximately 50 alumni of the seminars since 2004. And then on the internship side of the house, we have the AT&T Washington Center Scholars, which we, President Hurley arranged for an AT&T scholarship that pays approximately half of the internship, and a student goes and interns in Washington, D.C. Now, it's not what a lot of people think.
Right.
They think it's just going to be an internship in Congress or an internship at the White House, which we can do those.
Sure.
But if you are a business major and you're interested in money and banking, how about interning with Merrill Lynch?
Right.
Or if you are an art major, how about interning at one of the Smithsonians?
Sure.
We have a student right now who's interning in DC with an organization that helps the homeless.
Wow.
Through running, of all things.
Wow.
Gets them out running, helps them build their self-esteem, gets them into classes, helps them get off the street.
Sure.
Which is interesting. We had a student that interned with the Federal Marshal Service. So we have interns in all different disciplines, and that's a lot of fun.
Opportunities that can't be offered here in Pikeville, but truly things that can change a student's life.
Absolutely. The one thing I hear from the students who intern or who do the seminars is that it was a life-changing experience.
Mm-hmm.
And every one of them wants to do it again.
Sure, absolutely. Well, students are eligible to participate in the internships or in the seminars, and how are they selected?
Well, the internship program, I prefer to send juniors or seniors, either one. But they need to be far enough along in their academic career to be ready to handle a semester in Washington, D.C. away from home.
Sure.
Any discipline, I don't care what discipline. And the only academic requirement is you have to have a 2.85
Right.
GPA, so that'll work. As far as the seminars are concerned, those are juniors or seniors also, some sophomores depending on if they're ready. And we have a little bit different program for that because we do have a group of scholarships. For January, we will have between 4 and 6 scholarships depending on how many applicants we get. The scholarship is the Fred W. Meyer Jr. Washington Center Scholars Program. It's named after my father.
Nice.
Yeah, I was pretty pleased with that. And we will fund their program completely. It includes their tuition, their housing, and they need to write an essay, actually, to explain why they should go.
Sure.
We take the essay, we have a group of faculty that read them without the names attached. They rank them, and we send the kids that we think are going to get the most out of the program.
Right. Sure. It's a great program. We all text these days. You're a beloved member of the faculty. Students respect you, admire you, enjoy your classes.
Thank you.
And I've talked with many students that you interact with the students. You're not a professor that keeps office hours. That's it. Outside of that, I don't want to hear from you. When these students are in Washington for an internship or for a seminar, I would imagine you hear from them. Talk about some of your texts that you receive.
I get some interesting texts, but you kind of tickled me when you were talking about texts, because one of my favorite stories right now is one of my alumni, actually, who I get text messages from very randomly.
Sure.
To tell me where he is and what he is seeing, and it's Nick Jamerson of Sunday Best. He texts me regularly because he was a history political science major,
Right.
and he was in Dallas a while back and wanted to know what I thought of the Kennedy assassination, and that was kind of fun.
Sure.
Because I love the fact that they still stay in contact.
Right.
But one of the things that, another text that I remember so well, was a student on one of the seminars went to the National Archives. and she was standing in front of the Constitution,
Right.
crying, because for the first time she saw the real Constitution.
Sure.
And she's now a teacher.
Right.
What a marvelous thing she can take to her students, of having cried when she saw the Constitution for real. So those are some of the ones that tickle me, but I also love the ones that I just saw so and so.
Yes.
You know, I just saw this person, or I just met this senator, or I just met this senator, and he's not as nice as I thought he was,
Exactly.
which I think is also an education
Sure.
in and of itself.
Absolutely.
So those are great.
Your students do love you, and that's obvious that they keep in touch with you.
They do.
And they respect you. They've taken history. You've taken history and giving them something that they can study and learn from the rest of their lives. I've been in the National Archives, and it's an emotional place when you see some of the documents and think about that. You take those from classes. You don't walk into a freshman history class, American history class, and just have that. It's something that it's taught and learned. You've taught many different classes over the years. Favorite class to teach?
The class that I find the most fun to teach
Yes.
is American Chief Executive, the Presidency.
Ah,
The students that take that class will always tell me later, they always talk about how hard it was, but they always tell me later that it was the class they enjoyed most.
sure.
And basically, it's a Tuesday, Thursday class. I go in there, I have approximately 28 days, and I go in there each day and talk about a president for 75 minutes.
Right.
And it's challenging to me. How much can I remember? What stories can I remember?
Sure.
What can I bring to them that they're not familiar with? And it's academically challenging to me, but it's also a great deal of fun because it brings both the personality, the political science, the history. It brings it all together into one thing.
Your favorite president?
Franklin Roosevelt,
Least favorite?
Woodrow Wilson. And my students who hear that will laugh. They will
Yes.
know what I'm saying.
Very good. It sounds like a fun class.
It is.
It sounds like a very entertaining class. Is that one of the classes that your students say would be their favorite?
Yeah, it's kind of fun. It depends on the group. In general, the ones that my majors liked best was Chief. But my law students
Yes.
like my Constitution class because it gives them something when they go in to study the law. They have a historical context for some of the cases they have to learn.
Very good.
So they like that.
Touching lives, that's what teaching's all about.
It is.
And you've touched many. You've seen many go on to successful careers, and I would not put you on the spot to name some of the successful careers that your students have gone on to, because I know we would leave somebody out in the time of this program. And well, I ended up here, and she didn't mention my career, so my feeling, we wouldn't do that. Dr. Nancy Cade, always a pleasure. We're out of time again,
Thank you.
but we've got to get together more often.
Okay.
We want to talk about this post-election and talk a little more political science, talk about some things going on with the Division of Social Science at the University of Pikeville. Truly, it's one of my favorite programs. You're a longtime member of the faculty at the University of Pikeville, and there's a reason for that. There's a reason they keep you around. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Dr. Nancy Cade, Chair of the Division of Social Science at the University of Pikeville, our guest on this edition of Where the 99 Lead. Where the 99 Lead talks about the historic 99 steps that lead to the University of Pikeville campus, but also from campus into the community, into the world, and even to Washington. You've been tuned to Where the 99 Lead, a program brought to you by the University of Pikeville, the leading university of Central Appalachia.